Well, happy Tough Talk Tuesday, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with y'all and to have Eddie White back with us. How you doing, Eddie?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Blessed and highly favored, as they say.
Hey, glory. Yes, well, good, good, good. Listen, when y'all come in, y'all know what to do. Go ahead and share this. And I am taking a moment right now just to share it. So make sure that y'all do the same thing as well. All right, so we are live and direct. So I'm excited to be here. We are streaming. Let me see. So we are on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And the next time we go live, I want to go on TikTok. So I normally go live on TikTok, just a little bit of something. But RDH counseling, we are going to go live. Look, once I figure out how to allow the guests to come over there, we're going to go live. So every Tuesday this month, we have been doing a live Tough Talk Tuesday. And as y'all know, Tough Talk Tuesday, we talk to the men, we support the men, we encourage the men. And today is no different. So today we are talking about mending the Black man. That's been the series for this month. But we're talking about leadership and self-discipline and what that is, how that looks, and what challenges come when people start trying to lead. What does that look like, and how does discipline play into that, and especially men of color. So we are talking about that. And as you all come in, let me know where y'all are tuning in from. Y'all know I love to shout y'all out. Um, Before we hop into it, I want to make a couple of brief announcements. So, as you all know, we are looking for ways to support our men. And so this year we are doing our first men's wellness retreat. And with our men's wellness retreat, I am so excited to be able to do that because it's a space and a place for our men to rest. And so we are looking to be able to allow them to relax. Let me see, because REST is an acronym. So relaxation, encouragement, support, and training. So we want you to have a safe space where you can come in, take your mask off, a 4-day, 4-night restful relaxation retreat in Sandbridge at one of the beach homes. And in addition to the chef meals and the massages and just kind of getting a chance to kind of connect with other brothers, we also have Eddie, and he is going to be helping y'all figure out your next steps, start getting you to think strategically about where you are, about the type of man you are, who you want to be, what roles you're currently playing, and how you want to show up. And so we want to help support you with that. So that is our men's wellness retreat. Our That's going to be in October, and then next month we are going to have our on Wednesdays, we're going to be talking to the pastors because pastors are people too, y'all. And pastors need support just like the men do. And so we have our shepherds retreat. And so next month, y'all join us Wednesdays at 7 p.m. because we're going to talk to pastors. We want to hear the pastor's heart. And God is interested in healing pastors' hearts so that as they lead, they're able to lead from a healed, healthy place so they're not bleeding on the people that they are called to serve. So we're going to be talking about that. And that retreat is going to be in November. If you are looking to partner and you want to get your business out there, we have sponsorship opportunities. And the link is in the comments, so you can connect with us there and be able to get your name connected with a venture that is positive, that is helping our men. So enough about that. We're going to have Eddie to introduce themselves. If y'all did not have an opportunity last, I think it was the first Tuesday
Two
of
weeks
the
ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
yeah, about 2 weeks ago. Listen, if you haven't had a chance to go back and check that out, you need to because we had a really good conversation and we were talking to the men and really encouraging and supporting them. And so we have Eddie joining us again, and we're excited to have him back. Eddie White of jedwardwhitejr.com. And so, Eddie, take a few moments to introduce yourself, and then we're going to hop right into the questions.
Yeah, obviously great to be here again. Love spending time with you, Rachel, and able to talk about different things and give insights, I believe, to help people be the best they can be, as you have showed the best they can. Real quick on me, and I'm going to focus a little bit more on my leadership background since we're going to be talking more leadership tonight. I am from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I tell people I'm not a Steelers fan because that's typically the first question people get. I'm actually not a Steelers fan. I graduated from the University of Georgia with a degree in chemistry. I got my master's in adult education. But on the leadership piece, which I think is most applicable, which I'll try to leverage as we talk tonight, I did 28 and a half years in the Army. I was commissioned back in 1993, served as what's called a chemical officer, then did time as a research systems analyst, and then finished up as a simulation operations officer. And in those positions, I served in the Pentagon, I served in Iraq, I served special operations, served in different leadership positions, was an aide de camp, and obviously commanded at the O3 level. And that is where a lot of my leadership insights came from, and that I'll try to share. Has also worked in NATO, so I've done international and joint assignments. So a lot of different diversity in what I've led. I've also been married for over 30 years, which is leadership in and of itself, and have two beautiful adult daughters and a son-in-law and a grandson. Which when I was going into business back about 6 years ago, when I was talking to different mentors, and I said, well, I've been in government, haven't really led. And one of my mentors and friends was like, no, you've been leading maybe a different space in a different way, but you have been leading for years, and business may be different, but it ain't that different from a leadership perspective. So some of the things we're going to talk about really cross all different facets of leadership: organizational leadership, familial leadership, relationship-based leadership, and hopefully that'll provide some nuggets, if you will, for those who are listening and those who will listen to the recording.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for your service. And I just got a notification. The Facebook is not streaming to Facebook. Well, give me one sec. A little bit of technical difficulties. But one of the things that you said that was so important, and it sometimes people don't even consider it, is that when you are married, yeah, that's leadership. And so that is definitely key. Let me see something real quick, Eddie. Let's see if this is going to work. All right. So hopefully we'll be able to have that resolved. But that is a key point that sometimes people are not even aware of. And for our men, those of you who sign up to go to the retreat, that's going to be something that we're going to want you to think about, right? The leadership and the different roles that you play, whether it's a husband. And as a husband, how do you feel like you're showing up? And where does discipline come in? Where does leadership come in? And how are you connecting from going from I to now you're in a family and the we piece of things. So we're going to talk more about that. And so, Eddie, are you ready to jump into the questions?
I think I am. We'll find out.
All right, so we're talking about leadership. We're talking about self-development, self-discipline rather. Start us there, right? When you're thinking about self-discipline, like what even is that? If you were to break that down for the viewers, what is self-discipline?
Yeah, there's a general understanding, and some of these are dictionary definitions, some are more social construct. And as you apply it, and most people know there's two different definitions of discipline. We're not going to talk about the, fixing when you're wrong,
Yeah.
physical discipline if you're parents, all of that stuff. But the basis of discipline for most adults is, a lot of people kind of shorten it as doing what's right.
Yeah.
It is really adhering to positive habits, because most people view if you're more disciplined, it's more positive. Those are really the two anchors when I think about discipline. Are you doing what's right? And you can trace to, what do you define as right? What are your determinants for that?
Yeah.
But then the second part, adhering to positive habits. And then, the whole trace of, your habits build your character and how you play that out. So when I think of self-discipline, you then apply that to yourself. How are you adhering to the habits so that you can achieve what you want to achieve? How are you doing what you believe is right, and the construct that you have of right versus wrong? And all of that should be moving you in a way where the outcomes are positive, the growth, the maturity. And so you're doing something to get something. And I think discipline fits into, how are you doing what you feel is right, and how disciplined you and your habits to adhere to those from day to day, week to week, and sometimes it's hour to hour, depending on how far you can get off track with certain things.
When you talk about that definition of self discipline, um, 10 is like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. And one is like easy peasy. How would you rate it when you're talking about self discipline?
I think it goes back to your foundation. And I'll say,
Mm-hmm.
those who didn't see what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, we had talked about how your foundation is established when you're a
Yeah.
child and when you grow up. And, you can't divorce yourself from your past. Sometimes you have to reset your present to enable your future. So when you talk about how hard it is, it's really a matter of, when you grew up, when you created those characteristics, when you weren't necessarily an autonomous adult,
Yeah.
but you were someone who was in a household and you had parents, or when you were in school and you had assignments, when you had chores, when you were doing different things,
Mm-hmm.
and your parents told you what you're supposed to do, and how much were you kind of working in the gray and avoiding and not doing it.
Yeah.
How did that coalesce when you became an adult? And if it comes together well,
Yeah.
based off all the bad and all the struggles and all the positives, then it becomes more natural. It becomes, I know I'm supposed to get up and do this, whatever that
Yeah.
may be. Some of it, I was watching the video. Some of it is, making up your bed. Some of it is, eating breakfast. If you're somebody that, feels, some of it is working out. If that becomes in your nature, then it's not as hard. But if your nature is to, I'm just going to see how today works out, and, well, I don't feel like doing that, and I know
Yeah.
I shouldn't do that, but it'll be okay if I do it this one time, and it'll be okay if I do it the next time. Then all of a sudden, when you say discipline relative to what you're trying to do, those positive habits, or
Yeah.
discipline to invest and prioritize what you want to do to move forward, it's like, man, that is hard. So I think it's very much relative to your foundation
Yeah.
and the characteristics you have.
And that is so key, because when you talk about, and this is one of the things that um, a couple of weeks ago we were talking about fatherhood and the impact of fatherhood. And so even when you're talking about discipline, that is a learned behavior, really. And so if you um, haven't had the privilege of being fathered, you may struggle when it comes to being disciplined, because that's one of the things that fathers really have the opportunity to do, is to instill discipline, is to help teach boys to get past their feelings and their emotions that, oh, I don't feel like doing it, so I'm not going to do it. If they're learning that at an early age, like you said, then it rolls over and it ties into how men are showing up as adults. So I think that is definitely.
Yeah, and the one thing, the asterisk to a lot of discipline discussion,
Yeah.
I find that if you care about it, you will
Mm-hmm.
discipline yourself to do it. And we talked about how you define right. So when you talk
Yeah.
about, if you care about it, There
Mhm.
are people that care about video games,
Mhm.
young men. They
Yeah.
care about it. So guess what they're disciplined to do every night at 10 o'clock,
Eh,
whatever it is, they're going to be on that video game, right?
Yep.
So when you become a father, or if you're in your professional capacity, you're in a relationship, if you care about it, you will find that you start doing
Yeah.
the things that make that successful. You start attending and being invested. The question becomes, if you're undisciplined, do you care about that? It's a little bit of the chicken and egg. So if you ain't invested as a
Mm,
father, if you're not
yeah.
invested as a husband, is it because you don't care? Because if you care, I think you can trace most people, if they care about it, and definitely if they care about it enough, oh, they're disciplined about it.
Oh, Eddie, you listen now. You're opening up the Pandora's box, right? Because that is one of the things that I think is important for people to, especially our men, to consider, especially when they're thinking about self-discipline. Because sometimes we hear people say, I really want to do this. I really want to, and you fill in the blanks, whatever the this is, and yet you notice that you are not putting the energy, the effort, and the discipline into it. It does beg to question, ah, is this something that you really are? It's important to you. Are you prioritizing it? Is it something you really are wanting to do? So that is, listen, you already stepping on toes. All right. So when we are talking about, so you define self discipline and really that connection of the definition. When you're thinking about self leadership, where you go with that?
Yeah. And leadership is multifaceted, and there are different definitions. I mean, like I said, a lot of
Yeah.
these you can get dictionary, you can get,
Yeah.
first line, second line, then you have broad. And leadership typically is associated with a couple things: providing purpose, providing direction. In the military, we use the term providing motivation, oriented towards the group achieving a goal or a task. So
Yeah.
you're trying to provide clarity in what and direction on where we're trying to go. If you talk about self leadership, now you got to look introspectively,
Mhm.
or, for me, spiritually, as far as who is giving me purpose, direction, motivation. How
Yeah.
am I defining
Yeah.
purpose, direction, and motivation? And then what is the goal or the task that I'm trying to achieve? Most people consider leadership externally. You have organizational leadership. We talked about familial leadership. You have all these different types of leadership, business leadership. But leadership in most forms will tell you starts with knowing yourself. Knowing yourself. And then when
Yeah.
you couple that with discipline, how are you being disciplined in doing the things that you need to do to essentially lead yourself? So when I think of leadership, I think about, okay, how are you adhering to the guidance that you're given? Now, here's the question about guidance given, particularly from a self leadership. I tell people I'm God purpose and I'm spirit led. When I introduce myself in different forms and people don't know me, I didn't do it for this one, but I tell people I'm God purpose and spirit led. What that means is God has a purpose for me, and I have received that purpose, which means I know what God's purpose is for me. I didn't set the purpose. I didn't bring myself into this world. God did. God brought me into
Yeah.
this world for a purpose. The other part is spirit led. So I'm a person who feels the Holy Spirit resides in me, and that is also my compass and comforter. Compass means that's my guide.
Yeah.
So there are instances where my guide tells me something I should do. Now it turns into a conversation about obedience. Because if you heard it, if you have your purpose, you have a relationship, and you heard it, just like if you're a follower and someone tells you something and you hear it, now it's on you to do it. The purpose may have been provided, the direction may have been provided. Now, are you going to adhere to that? So when you take that from a personal perspective, who is the person? What is that inner voice, or what is the determinant for whether or not you actually do what you're supposed to do? And can you effectively do that? Because if you can effectively lead yourself, now that can translate to leading others. So when I think of self-leadership, it really comes down to how are you either spiritually or definitely in the natural being disciplined enough to adhere to the purpose, direction, and motivation that enables you to achieve the goals and the tasks, if you will, that you are charged to achieve.
I love that. I love that. And you bring in some other pieces too, especially when you talk about being spirit led. Let me see if I can get it right. Spirit led and purpose,
God purpose.
God purpose. And, a lot of times that part is a struggle for individuals, especially for men, sometimes, not all the time. But when we're talking about their ability to, one, already know what their purpose is. And because some people struggle with that, like, I don't know what I'm here for. And so that's one of the things that we'll be covering. I'll be covering at the retreat as well. But knowing your purpose and then being able to kind of have that connection between I'm spirit filled, I'm God led, I know my purpose, and sometimes that becoming the motivation to do what you need to do, even when you don't feel. Leaders do things that we don't want to do, even when we.
Mm-hmm.
And so having that foundation there, that really does play a role in helping you to do what you're supposed to do, the right thing to do, even when it's not easy to do. So I thank you for bringing that up. Um, when you think about this discipline, like on a daily basis, or even a minute by minute basis, like what really are we talking about? What are practical things, or like what does that even mean when we're talking about that?
Yeah, one of the things I talk about in different forums is the principle of clarity and certainty.
Mhm.
Having clarity of where you're trying to go, what do you see, in certainty, and to a certain extent, your conviction in doing what you're going to do. So I believe that we control only a few things. I believe we control our decisions, we control our opinions, we control our attitude, we control our actions. If that's what you control and you want to now try to, bound it by discipline in this
Yeah,
context, now it's okay, what are the decisions you're making? And are those decisions consistent with the goals that you have? And does that translate into actions you take
gotcha.
in the, over a time period, right?
Mhm.
So whether you are looking at minutes, hours, chunks of the day, the whole day, the week, the month, however you, parse out your given, time frame, if there are things on your task list, if there's things that you are obligated to do, if there is a physical aspect, if there's a
Yeah,
spiritual aspect, if there's a relationship aspect, if there's a professional, all of those have aspects that are fed by discipline. Now, the question becomes when you do that, and
yeah,
as you feed that, okay, are you doing what's right? Are you doing what's consistent with where you're trying to go? And when you're off, you can kind of figure out why you're off. One of the things that I used to be able to be a real good barometer for me in my relationship was if me and my wife are kind of arguing a little bit more and we're not
yeah.
vibing correct, there's probably a communication issue. That was what I always kind of born to. So
Mhm.
now I need to address that. What's the communication issue? What are we not talking about? And
Yeah,
that, like I talked about, if you care about it, then you'll discipline. Then I need to be more disciplined with how I'm communicating. So
yeah.
it it shows up in different ways, but I think it ties into where do you want to go and how are you functioning in order to get there.
Gotcha. Let me reset the room. And I apologize. There were some technical difficulties earlier, and so it stopped streaming to Facebook. But thank y'all for joining. As you come in, let us know where you're tuning in from. Just as a recap, we have been talking about self discipline, we've been talking about leadership as well. And we also tied it in with really self leadership. And Eddie is a husband, he's a father. And so what he's been able to do is to tie his experiences in to help it make sense when we're talking about what leadership is, what self-discipline is, and how that shows up, especially when we begin to talk about purpose. And when you know your purpose, and it's okay right now if you don't know your purpose, right? Now you don't have to stay there, and we don't want you to stay there and not know your purpose. But as men, and especially men of color, it is, and especially if you're in roles of fathers, husbands, being disciplined, right? Being able to discipline yourself so that you can show up and lead is going to be important. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about father wounds, we talked about fatherhood. And one of the impacts, which is why we celebrate and we salute our men. So we need y'all. Listen, we need y'all because your children need you, and we need you to show up because there's so many things that you do. So as a father, now I'm a female, and so I can only talk about my experience as a daughter. Having a father be able to speak life, speak identity, um, your daughters need it, okay? And your sons, they need it as well. And so as fathers, being able to be disciplined, from the therapeutic side, I'm the therapist, so I look at things from the emotional and the mental health part of things. But your ability to discipline your emotions is key, especially as you're talking about showing up as a husband, doing things you don't feel like doing, being able to discipline your thought life so that your emotions aren't running the show is going to be important. So thank y'all for joining. Make sure y'all share this. Hola. We got some Spanish. Hola, como está? Look, Eddie, I was using my Spanish, in, I work in the jail, and I was using my don't listen, the girl, I can remember. I remember a little bit.
Poquito.
Oh yes. Hey, let us know where y'all are tuning in from. But Eddie, when you think about how fathers, how this self-discipline, and this isn't one of the questions, but since we're here, I kind of want us to go there. How, in your role as a father, how has self-discipline and leadership connected, shown up, and made you be able to be what your daughters, because you have all daughters. So how did that help you?
I think it regulated my actions. We talked about if you care, you'll do it.
Yeah.
And if you prioritize what you want to do, then you're going to do that before you do something else. And as you know, there's a lot of things that any given day, any given week, any given month, any given year, based off your professional demands, based off your personal, hobbies, your interests, based off your relationship with your parents, your spouse, your cousins, your friends. There's all these different things that are introduced into your space. And when you talk about self-discipline and you associate that with self-leadership as a father,
yeah,
you have to be clear-minded on what matters most now. And I tell people, this is a drill I do when I do some of my parenting classes. And I kind of ask, what's the most important time in your child's life? As a
yeah,
parent, what's the most important time in your child's life? Is it 0 to 2, 2 to 5, 6 to 12, 13 to 17, 17 to 18? And I get these different answers. And so particularly with fathers, I go, okay, so you have your answer. If your answer is, for me, it's 6 to 12, I view that as a critical shaping years. So if I view 6 to 12, and I don't begrudge anybody which whatever they view, science, teenage years, whatever, I said, how do you ensure that over the 15 or 20 years that you had to choose from, that those 4 or 5 years,
yeah.
that you are most present and available to your child?
Mm-hmm.
If you say it's 0 to 2, then how do you ensure you're most present and available from 0 to 2? I don't care what age you say, but if you want to be disciplined,
Yeah,
and you want to be consistent, then if that's the most important, I understand you have professional aspirations, but that ain't the time to go leave for a year, do a
Yep.
job where you're working 15 hours a day and you're not available because you just said that that's the most important time and you don't get that time back. So when I started looking at how I was investing my time in my career and all the different parts of my life as a father, that particular 6 year window or 7 year window, I made sure that priority one was being available and present with my kids. And I had to be disciplined. So I couldn't go, do this. I couldn't go do that. I wasn't going to spend that much time doing this. I was going to make sure that I was disciplined, that I was adhering to the habits that I wanted, that I was doing what in my definition was right by my children. And that's kind of how I think it applied to me as a father.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that we're going to be talking about at the retreat is thinking. So thinking ahead, thinking strategically, and aligning your actions with what you're saying is important. And I think a lot of times we as parents, we don't even think like that. Like, okay, well, what are the years I'm saying is important? Oh, they're important. Okay. Maybe I got to now that I have identified the years I think is going to be important, how do I manage my decisions, my choices, my behaviors so that I can be present? And I think that's so important, especially for the men that are going to be at the retreat, so that they can start thinking, assessing. No, there's no judgment. Assess where you are, where you want to go, and like Eddie, you always say, you go where your eyes take you. So now that you are thinking about what's important, you can make sure that you discipline yourself and your behaviors to line up with what it is that you're saying is important. So that's thank you for answering that question. um when you're, and I'm going to the questions now, if y'all have, and let me pause for just a second, in the comments, what are the ages that you feel, especially for those of y'all who are parents or you're thinking about becoming a parent, what in your opinion would be the critical shaping years, the years that you're like, okay, these are the years I really need to show up for my children because this is going to have the most impact, the most bang for my buck. I'm just curious what ages y'all say. Put that in the chat. I want to see, and then we're going to talk about that. um, why are um, when we're talking about discipline in daily living, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm just thinking now about some of the discipline, like working out. I say that's important, and it is. And I listen, I walk a lot during the day, but I'm trying to get a six pack, and I have not I've not been disciplined. So there are things, and it goes back to what you said. There are things that we say is important, but our actions, our behaviors are not lining up. But when we're talking about discipline in our daily lives, why is that important for men in their roles, whether it's son, father, husband? Like, why is that discipline important in their roles?
Yeah. Ultimately, it's how you show up. And you
Mm,
mentioned this earlier, and people show up in different ways.
yeah.
One of the terms I use when I talk to fathers is being all in. And being all in means you're there not only physically, but you're there mentally, you're there emotionally. You're investing your whole self
Mhm.
in the space that you're existing in at that time with those people. Now, before we had cell phones and all the other stuff, this was felt a little bit abstract. Like, what are you talking about? You're there. But it's like, no, even before then, people will go to work, they come home from work, and they're
Yep.
still thinking about work for another 3, 4 hours after they're done with work. And they're
Hmm.
having a conversation with their spouse and they ain't hearing anything the spouse saying. They're like, how did this guy, my job, jack this up? And how do I fix this tomorrow?
Yeah.
Right? Or they come home and they're just emotionally spent because work just took everything out and they can't offer anything. Therefore, when you talk about discipline and you talk about how it shows up, if it matters to you, then you're going to do it. That's one thing we talk about. If it matters to you, if you care, you're going to do it. So you got to figure out, how do I make sure that if I'm there, I'm there? And it can be difficult. I'll tell you, I did this, and this is something I didn't tell a lot of people because people couldn't grasp it, I think,
Yeah.
and they would take it the wrong way. But years ago, I was in New Jersey. I was a commander, a deputy division commander for, it was a reserve component unit. So those who are in the Army, it wasn't a full traditional division, which are thousands. It was more like hundreds. But in this space, I would listen to people who were in this job, and they were active duty people like me. And one guy, he was blackballed. He had rubbed everybody so much and so bad that they wouldn't listen to him, even though he had great ideas. The other guy was uber cynical. I mean, he was just like, he doesn't care. He's almost completely apathetic. And
Gotcha.
they had both been there about 3 years. This is about the length of the assignment. And I was sitting there my first couple of months, and I'm like, bruh, left and right, I ain't trying to be either of those. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to be, blackballed. I'm not trying to be, just cynical.
Yeah.
And I created this mantra in order to keep me where I needed to be for the duration. And the mantra was I would be physically there, I would be mentally invested, but I'm going to be emotionally divorced. Now, I would have never said this when I worked in the Pentagon and I got those, but in that space, for me to make sure that I could be fully delivering what I could offer to the organization, to the people of the organization, I needed to physically show up because we worked weekends, we did calls at night. So it was any given time of day. I was going to make sure I was physically there if I needed to be there. I was going to
Yeah.
be mentally. So you got me whiteboarding, you got all of the things that I could think about to make the organization as good as it could be. I was there. But emotionally, I was like, no, I can't do that because I've seen what happened over the last couple, 3 years with these guys, and I'm not
Yeah.
going to have it happen to me. So when I say show up and all in, it's a lot more clear now because people could be on their phone when you're in a conversation. It's like, okay, you in this conversation? Did you hear what
Yeah.
I said? Well, I'm sorry, I was thinking about something else. Well, you ain't all in. You got to decide if you are investing in something or someone, are you going to give them all of you for the time you're with them? And sometimes it's hard, but if it matters, then you will. And that is a personal decision on how you show up any given day, any given moment you're with somebody in their space.
And Eddie. And that's a challenge sometimes for our men, especially those who have and I have had the privilege of working with men who are fathers, men who are husbands. And one of the challenges that a lot of men face is being emotionally present. So yes, they are there. Yes, they are, at the games and all of that. But the emotionally present part, it's challenging for them for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of our men are burnt out. They have so much happening in their world, and they don't have safe spaces to process it, to talk about it. And so, just like you said, it's like, listen, so they have this thing called spoon theory. And basically, it's like, listen, I got 5 spoons, and maybe you only have 3 spoons, but whatever it is, those spoons is the capacity or the bandwidth that you have to do all of the things. And sometimes when our men are burned out, they don't have safe spaces and they have been carrying a load, they cannot show up emotionally. I'm here. I'm paying this, and this is what we hear. I'm paying the bills, ain't I? I come home every night, and she like, but bruh, I'm raising the kids by myself, or I don't feel like we are connected. And so, Eddie, you were hitting that thing right on the head, and it becomes a protective. That's the word. I'm missing the word, but it becomes something that people do to protect themselves. This is all I have. I have to preserve me. Can give you, and which is why men go to therapy, sit on somebody's couch, process, talk about what you got going on. Because when you're thinking about being able to connect with your partner, to show up, um, it's going to be hard to do if you yourself aren't healed, healthy, and whole. I want to bring in some comments, Eddie, and then us kind of talk about that. So Edwina said, yes, that is true. There are times when the disconnection occurs and people don't even realize they are emotionally absent. Talk about that, Eddie, especially from the man's perspective, because if you were to if you were to say how easy or challenging it is for a man to disconnect, how how does that work for y'all men? Speak to that.
Yeah, it's actually pretty easy for men to disconnect, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
because the mental decision to disconnect goes to the emotional result of disconnecting.
Yeah.
So therefore, that is not that hard. The harder part is emotionally connecting in such a deep way that it is hard to disconnect. Because once you're now the level of vulnerability, and
Yeah.
this is something we talked about, and women have the same, trepidation, making sure yourself vulnerable
Yeah.
with the risk that you can be crushed. And almost
Mm,
everybody, most people have gone through heartbreak. We may have been young when you went through it, preferably weren't too old.
yeah.
But that level of vulnerability, uh, but you have to open yourself up in order
Yeah.
to let somebody in. And the more you open yourself up, the
Yeah.
closer they get. But man, when they get close, which means if they pull away, there's an analogy we use in the Army, um, where you put your fist in a pond. And
Okay.
when you pull your hand out, it'll ripple, but Army's going to keep rolling. It'll come back together. But if you think about that personally, that ain't a good analogy, right? Do you slide your hand out and it barely ripples, or somebody's just going to pull it out and make a big hand? And all of a sudden, that's you. That's your emotions. And once it happens once, you're like, ooh, I'm not sure I'm gonna do that again. So now it's longer to.
Yeah.
And because it becomes longer to that second iteration, it becomes easier for the mental to decide on the emotional. And that's where you get the challenge of the relationship being founded. And then you have the dynamic, and this is something that, I work in different communities here in the Hampton Roads area. But if you look at our upbringing, we talk about foundation before, and
Yeah.
depending on where you grew up and how you grew up, uh, vulnerability, weakness, perceived weakness, softness, that ain't something that's just being touted up. Yeah, hey, man, that's cool. Yeah, let's go ahead, let's hug, and like, tell me how your emotions are today. And did you struggle with something? That ain't the conversations kids are having,
Yeah.
13, 14 in the hood, to be straight up,
Yeah.
and therefore, and sometimes in the family, because there's stuff, hey, don't be talking about that. That, hey, that's going on in the family. That's something we don't talk about. So
Yeah.
you're almost creating a dynamic,
Yeah.
depending on your culture and community, where you're, yeah, we're not going to go down that road. And when you start walking down that road, well, I don't know you that
Yes.
well. I ain't
Mhm.
willing. And if you're raised that way, 25 years in, now you want to get into a relationship with someone you're supposed
Yes.
to open up to and bring
Mhm.
close. You're supposed to share.
Mhm.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. There's an incongruity there.
Yeah.
So therefore, no, that ain't happening. We'll go as long as we go. And then when I'm ready to open up, we'll get there. That may be 10 or 15 years. And during that decade, the other person's like, yo, where
What
you at?
about me?
What about
Yes.
me? Yeah.
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 Man, you preaching, Eddie. You preaching better than they saying amen. And I appreciate you sharing. And Edwina said facts, right? Because when we're talking about men and how they show up, um, it's not always easy for them to show up and be vulnerable because society is telling them you weak if you show emotions. Man up. And the sad part, it's not just society. Men have also taken on that languaging that has been, and I was on one of the pages, and the guy, when we posted that we were going to be talking about men this month, some of the men, man up, bruh, that's what got you where you are now, where 1 in 10 of our men are dealing with some type of mental health concern, and only half of them are dealing with it. And when you look at the stress and the anxiety that comes from life and not being able to have a place to deal with it, a lot of our men and men of color are taking their lives all because of that stupid stuff. Man up. No, it is okay. And so a part of what you see, I'm trying to calm myself down because I see the pain that my brothers are in. And so having challenging the narrative that you're weak if you say, hey, I'm not okay. Like, yo, it's okay not to be okay. And it is okay to say, hey, I need some help. I don't know what I'm doing. I need some help. I haven't had a father, so I'm out here trying to father, but I don't know what I'm doing. It's scary for me to connect emotionally with the female, and I'm married. What do I do? You need safe spaces for that. And so I'm honored to have the opportunity to have the men's groups and to be able to do this wellness retreat where, yeah, we're normalizing our men and especially men of color. Yeah, I'm normalizing. Come get this healing so that you can show up the way you want to show up. So thank you for bringing that up and speaking more to that, Eddie. When we're talking about life, when life start lifing, how are men? What helps men to stay committed and not pull away and not renege on what they said was important? Like what how does that look for you, and then how might that be applied to other men?
Yeah, I think there's two terms I would use: modeling and mentorship. Um, Modeling is a little bit more passive. It's what you see and how you make sense of it.
Mm-hmm.
Mentorship is more active and interactive, where it's explained to you and context is provided.
Yeah.
Now, the part about modeling and mentorship is you have to be open to that. I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day, and she's struggling with her son. I got a lot of parents I'm finding have 20-something-year-old sons that are,
Yeah.
trying to figure out what they're going to do, and they're trying to figure out in the house. And the parents like,
Yeah.
look, you need to try to figure out something to do somewhere else. And she was talking about even having them take my class and trying to help with some guidance. And I'm like, yeah. She actually made the comment about maybe I'll give them an ultimatum: either take the class or get out the house. And I'm like, you may not. I don't know if you want them coming into the class with that sort of
Yeah.
attitude.
Yeah.
Um, but then we got into the conversation about how does he get a mentor? I think he's 23 years old and he's just floating in that space. I think he's a drummer, so he have the artist piece.
Yeah.
And one of the things we first talked about was he has to find somebody he trusts. Um, Men, it's hard to get men to trust. Whether you're another man, if you're a woman, it's hard to get that trust. But the trust is the doorway
Yeah.
to vulnerability, to insight, to how they think, to how they feel, to how they deal with different things. So you want to get to a man and you want to have him show up the way that you desire him to show up. And this is something, a public service announcement for women, right? You get that trust, but
Yeah.
don't burn that trust. You
Ooh,
know,
child. Wait a minute, Eddie. Say that again, because the people in the back.
yeah, I mean, you have to get that trust, but don't burn that trust. Because when you burn that trust, it's hard to reignite it. Arguably, it's impossible to reignite. You're going to lose a portion of your man. The portion that you burn is scorched. And so it takes time to get that trust. And anybody who earns another man's trust, whether it be a man, whether it be a father, whether it be a friend, whether it be a spouse, it is a sacred space. And once you get that, it now lets you into their house. It brings you into that space. Now you can have and see and experience and pour into
Yeah.
the things that they are needing, that they know they need, but they ain't going to take it from anybody. That's our nature as
Yeah.
men.
Yeah. Wow. Listen, I'm gonna bring some of the comments in, but you are hitting it on the head, and it makes sense, right? That not only for men, but for anybody, trust is big. And so it takes a person to trust before they will open up and allow themselves to be vulnerable, really to expose the parts of them that can be hurt. And so when they are living life and trying to do it without knowing all of the steps, having a mentor is going to be important, but there has to be the trust there. One, that this person knows what they're talking about. They have to value what is being said, and then be willing to say, first off, be willing to say, I need help, right? And then receive it. And then, ladies, I know y'all heard what the man said. When your boo jank is opening up to you, because a lot of us as women, we want to be the safe space for our partners, but we have to be safe to be considered a safe space. And that means when he opens up, we're not sharing what he is saying, we're not throwing it back in his face, we're not breaking him down when he does show a side of, when he lets us behind the curtain, because it's not pretty behind the curtain. And so we as women, as queens, we have to be healthy enough to be able to support him when he does show us behind the curtain. And so I'm so glad you brought that up, Eddie. Rosalind said, and hey, welcome. When y'all come in, let us know where you're tuning in from. Share this. This is conversation that men and women need to hear. Now, we're specifically talking about mending the Black man, leadership as it relates to like self-discipline, and how that connects to leadership. But share this conversation. Rosalind said, in the group that I facilitate, it's heavily populated with men. And I try to remind them of their humanity and that life really, truly does happen to all of us. And that if they keep pushing through, they can recover, but they have to be intentional. Your thoughts about that, Eddie?
Yeah, absolutely right. One thing I'll go back, that intentional, as you know, Rachel, is a buzzword of mine.
Yeah.
One thing going back, and you talk about this, the humanity, and just to put a bow on what we just talked about,
Yeah.
for women and for anybody, particularly for women, when you kind of gave insights or cues to what not to do. The other thing is, whenever a man opens up, you cannot act like it doesn't matter. You just, I understand that's not a big deal. And it's almost like a teenager. I used to have teenagers, my daughters, where it's like, look, teenagers tell you stuff. They may tell one parent, but that other parent's going to tell the other parent. Now, if you've been married for a while, you know y'all tell everybody everything. But you can't let that get back to the teenager that you told them, because then it's like, I can't trust you to tell you. So when they open up that door, you can't act like it doesn't matter. You can't beat them up about how you get there. That doesn't make any sense. And you start talking down to them, and they're like, shoot, for all this, I'm going to just keep the door shut. And so I just want to put a bow on that. But that part that she talked about with the humanity that we all deal with, and in the abstract, it's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But in the personal, you're like, ooh, yeah, but my humanity is a little bit different. Now, the other part, which is the intentionality. And we talked earlier, and I'm not sure if she was on, we talked about leadership and purpose, direction, and motivation. And we talked about purpose. So when you say intentional, intentional needs to have somewhere to go. Intentional as an abstract term really doesn't say anything. Intentionally eating right, intentionally investing your time for the furtherance of your career, intentionally showing up. Whatever intentional is, it has to be associated with the leadership or the discipline that it needs to foster. So yes, you need to be intentional, but when you say intentional, the question becomes intentional about what? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really important part. And even, when I work with men, and we might do some of this at the retreat, where as the men are thinking about their roles, where they're wanting to go, and starting to think strategically, a part of that is having a goal, and the goals being what we call SMART. And so these goals, the SMART goals, which is an acronym, but The goals are specific. And so being intentional about clearly defining who you are, how you'd like to show up, and what you need to start doing now that's going to help you get there. And so tonight's conversation about self discipline as it relates to being a leader in your home, being as a father, husband, or whatever role, being intentional about being disciplined. Because it is so easy. And somebody else, not me, was saying, that they be falling off with their workout goals, right? And we can kind of laugh and joke about that. But think about from the men's perspective of you're a father, and yet you haven't been intentional about getting healed so that you can show up healed, healthy, and whole, and not repeat some of the patterns that your father did or did not do. So I think that's really important, even as you're talking about challenges that, and this ties into our next question. How can men overcome some of the barriers when it comes to dealing with their own personal challenges?
Mm. So, one, we have to learn how to be comfortable with ourselves. First and foremost, you if you're a man and you can't sit in a space where you exist by yourself with your thoughts, with the ugly things that got you to where you are, with the challenges you have to deal with the personal shortfalls that you have, you got to be comfortable. Now, and I'll tell you, not to plug you, Rachel, but if you can't, you need to find somebody that helps you be able to do that. No matter where you go with you. And you can't run from yourself. So to overcome anything, to create what you want, it starts with you recognizing who you are, if you're spiritual, whose you are, which is why you should seek to understand your purpose. You should seek to have a relationship from a spiritual perspective. And if you don't have it in the spiritual realm, you need to find it in the natural realm. Find a man, find a mentor, someone that you trust, someone who's walked past that you want to walk, someone who speaks to you to encourage you, to pour into you, to enable you. Because overcoming the barrier, typically for us, is not a singular person task, right? We know we're built on our forefathers and our ancestors, but a lot of times you need somebody to help you over that barrier. You ain't just walking. The analogy of getting over a barrier means you have to do something to overcome that barrier. You ain't just walking down the street and everything's cool. There's something you got to overcome. So who's going to help you get over that barrier? Because if it's only you, then this is what happens. All the pressure's on you, right? It's all on me. I can't climb this wall if it's a wall. It's all on me. I'm failing. There's nobody. And you look around, there's nobody saying, no, you're good. There's nobody going to, hey, let me help you get up. There's nobody saying, hey, I dealt with this before and I've managed this. You're sitting there like it's all on me. So now the stuff that you're talking about, Rachel, it starts to get heavy. You start to get stressed. Any man who sees themselves about to fail or something about to happen, we all get that sweat. Like, man, what is going on? If that is your daily, it just gets overwhelming. So you've got to figure out, think of the analogy of getting over a barrier and think about how hard it is if it's just you and you don't do it that first time or that second time. That third and fourth, it starts to feeling futile. So I think to overcome the barrier, whether it's daily, it's a major thing. Spiritually, you need to get that reinforcement. Naturally, get that reinforcement. Find out how do you connect with another person who is anchoring you and helping you and encouraging you. That's a little bit abstract, but that is a way to view getting over a given barrier.
Yeah. I think that is so key what it is, what you're saying, which is listen, being comfortable enough in your own skin. And sometimes you're not there and there's no judgment But when you recognize that you're not there, because I've worked over the years with a lot of people who, men and women, who don't, are not comfortable being by themselves. So they stay busy. They're always doing something. They're always around people, always, because when the quietness comes, memories come, guilt comes, um, failures come. And so being able to do the work so that you can heal and be able to be okay by yourself, because you hit it on the head. You are with you all day, every day. And outside of God, you are going to be with you all day, every day. And so that relationship that you have with yourself is going to be key, especially when it comes to dealing with challenges. Because life, listen, life be life. And if you don't have a community, God created us to be in community. And so if you don't have a community of other men that are supporting and are saying, you got this, bruh, yeah, it is going to be hard. And I have worked with so many men who have dealt with depression and suicidal thoughts. And to see, like I said, I do work in the jails, and to see the men that are on suicide watch because they just feel like, this is too much. And so what you're saying is certainly very important and is definitely necessary. I want to pull in from, we're a little bit over. Thank y'all for joining. As you come in, let us know where you're tuning in from. Feel free to share this. We've been talking about leadership. We've been talking, this is the last of the Mending the Black Man series. And we have been talking tonight about self discipline, as and how it connects to leadership. And you can't, if you got to lead you first in order to be an effective leader. And sometimes it's challenging for men to be disciplined enough to lead themselves because, one, they may not have been fathered properly, may not have learned how to still yourself and to put away the desire for instant gratification. Anxiety sets in. And so it's like, listen, let me go over here. This don't feel good. And so when you're talking about being a healthy, healed, and whole man, a part of that requires the self-discipline so that you can lead your family and whoever else you're going to be leading. So that part is important. We've been kind of talking about that. I'm looking at the questions, Eddie. This is a good question. I do want us to at least hit on this. Where or when do men feel the tension between who they are and who they are becoming? So when you talked about a man with purpose, a man that is wanting to become more disciplined, self-disciplined, so that he can show up how he wants to. So let's talk about that tension between you ain't where, what they say, you ain't where you used to be, but you, what is that, Eddie? What is that saying? I'm not where I used to be, but I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I used. Some, how they say it? What's that?
I don't know. You making up that term, Rich. I don't know. I don't know.
If y'all know it, y'all put it in the comments. But that tension between, man, where I am right now, I know there's got to be more. I want to be a better man, a better father, a better husband, a better leader. And I see it right over here. I ain't quite there. And it's challenging to be consistent enough to get there. How can men deal with that tension?
So I mean, that's a tricky question because tension, depending how you look at the view,
Okay.
tension from I see myself, an analogy that the way you described is I see myself going somewhere better, but I'm not there yet. So the tension is the stress or concern about not getting there. The tension is, can I actually get there? Or what happens when I get there? So whenever you're in this
Mhm.
space where you're moving, I'm assuming this is all the positive tension because there's a negative tension, as well, where you're going the other way. So let's not talk
Yeah.
about where you start to digress and you make
Yeah.
decisions that create problems and challenges. You're like, man, this
Mhm.
isn't, I didn't get married for this to happen. So that's why I say there's two different ways. You can go tension where how did I put myself in this situation
Yeah.
and where is this going to? And that creates that, deep gut feeling of failure, of, embarrassment, of disparaging my name. That's a tension.
Yeah.
The tension you're talking about is typically born from someone who doesn't have the confidence that they have earned and deserve to achieve the success they're having. And dealing with that is a matter of affirmation, either internally, belief and trust that you keep doing it, and then deal with the success of it. And then there's another interesting angle, and I'll share this one from a relationship perspective because my wife kind of dropped this on me. Oof, we've been married about 30 years. This may have been 15 years ago. As you know, years run together after 2-3 decades. Um, but and I'm not sure if this answers your question, but we've been married at that point, let's say 12 to 13 years, and we had a good marriage. No major issues. We just rolling along, and then every once in a while, I'll start asking questions. This, and the third, and I do that every couple 3 years, whatever. And then at one point, my wife, she goes, Eddie, why does it seem like you're trying to create problems when there are no problems? We're in a good place. Marriage is good. Kids are good. Why does it seem like you asking and prodding to try to generate some stuff, some math that don't need to be generated? And my wife, after that, you see, like, look, if I'm not good, I'll tell you I'm not good, right? But I'm good. And that really kind of set me back. Like, it does seem like, I may not have consciously or overtly been doing it, but it's like, can this really happen? So let me see what's going on. Let me see if this is really going on. He said, wait a
Yeah.
minute. And so that it's a level of consternation and almost disbelief.
Yeah.
And then you kind of create something to, I'm not going to say cause it to fail, but to make it seem like, let me scratch the surface to see if it's real.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if the paint comes off, it ain't real, then I really shouldn't. So that is a mechanism. And sometimes we do that, and some people call it self-sabotage if you go
Yes.
broader. But that creates that tension. Some people talk about fake team making this other stuff, but you really have to, ideally in that instance, you have somebody. And we talked about having that relationship, that mentor, that partner. But when you can get to the point where you trust them and they trust you, then they're going to call you out, or they're going to hold you accountable, or they're going to encourage you, or they're going to tell you, look,
Yeah.
you are that good and you deserve what you're doing. And oh, by the way, don't jack it up, right? Get it, keep it, and don't go all spiraling doing something you shouldn't do. But that's sometimes, you do it in an encouraging way, you do it in a positive way per se, but you're doing it to undergird. And sometimes we need that because when you start doing it on your own and no one kind of course corrects you and
Yeah.
make sure you're straight, then you could potentially screw that up. It's like, man, you were right there, you
Yeah.
know. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that person reminds me of a little bit is I don't know those who are NBA people is John Morant. John
Mm.
Morant about 3 years ago, he was trending to be the face of the NBA.
Mm.
Relatively young, very athletic, just balling. And he had, I think it was like a weapons issue where he's carrying a weapon to the club and it happened. They did this one. Then he did it again. And next thing you know,
Ah.
he had a Gatorade, he had all these endorsements and people were hiring him on major companies. And everybody's like, ooh, bro,
Yeah.
that's like, bro,
Yeah.
you were there
Yeah.
and you just almost self-sabotaged, if not almost, you did self-sabotage yourself and you let it all go away.
And Eddie, this is why it is so important for our men to do the work to get healed. Um, because sometimes they can be sabotaging themselves and not even be aware that they're doing it or not understand why they're doing it. And so when we're talking about this idea of really you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, it's because there are harmful core beliefs that they have. And we y'all go back and look at that first live that Eddie and I did this month. where we talked about wounds. And when you have trauma, it really impacts the way you see yourself. And so there is a very real thing called fear of success.
Mm.
And so we all have heard about fear of failure, right? But when we start talking about fear of success, what we're really saying is there is an insecurity there. There is a part of the man that feels, and this can go for men or women. We're just talking about men today. But when we're talking about men that are in marriages, and maybe you're the first man in your family to get married, and if a part of you does not believe that you are good enough, that you deserve to be in a healthy relationship, if you've never seen it happen, if a part of you, struggles with whether or not you have value, when you get something good, that part of you is going to show up and sabotage every single time you start getting close. Oh, they had a promotion on the job and they was like, we want you, we see the leadership, and you go and then you be like, nah, this ain't me. Or you have a marriage and you step outside the marriage. And so a lot of times it is connected to harmful core beliefs. You're believing lies about yourself. And so when we're talking about leadership, men being leaders, you may struggle with self discipline if there is traumatic issues there that have not been resolved. And you may want to walk like that. You may see other men and you're like, man, how come it's not easy for me? Because there may be some things that you need to work through. And so Eddie mentioned earlier about sitting on somebody's couch or getting that therapy. Because if you struggle with any kind of lies about your identity, and I call them lies in psychology and social work therapy world, we call them harmful core beliefs. But if you struggle with knowing your value and your worth, you are going to struggle when it comes to being disciplined at times. Because who am I to deserve to have a happy marriage? And so then I won't do the work to sustain and to maintain the marriage. In fact, I may sabotage it. So questions. Oh, this thing just went out again. The devil is busy, Andy. Let me see if we have any comments on the LinkedIn or on YouTube.
Facebook streaming went out again.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Let me see if we have any questions while I relink that. Yeah, this thing hating, but we listen, we call it back. Okay, good, we're back. Any questions as we end? Normally we go for an hour, y'all, so we are a little bit over. We did not get a chance to answer all of the questions that we had. Thoughts, takeaways, y'all, from any of what was covered. Eddie, any last thoughts, any things that came up for you as we were kind of talking? And I know it went to relationships too, which was a little bit different, but it makes sense. It's all connected. But any thoughts for you?
I think the one thing, and this was one of the questions that you had was considering asking, and that's how this looks. And when we talk about self-discipline, self-leadership, and you tie in a lot of stuff that we've been talking throughout this last hour or so, it can either look good or it could look bad. It can look good where you're walking in with clarity and certainty. You are grounded and healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. You're in healthy relationships with your spouse, with your children. You're in a good professional space. You're managing your finances. You're not, having any of these negative or catastrophic actions. We're all going to struggle. We're all going to, make decisions that are questionable. But foundationally, you're living in a space where you're at peace. You're on a trajectory that's taking you towards success. You see your legacy and your relationships that are fostering growth. And it sounds like it's nirvana, but it's not, because it's feasible and it can be realized. And that's what it looks like when you have the discipline, the leadership, the relationships.
Yes.
You have trusting relationships with people who are positive and pour into you, who challenge you, who hold you accountable. That is there. It may take a while, but you can get there. And everybody, I believe, can overcome whatever they dealt with. It may not be the highest mountain, but you can get to a pretty good hilltop and be in a place
Mhm.
of peace, enjoy, and feel like you're living a fulfilled life.
Yeah.
Or it could look bad. And I mean, I don't, Rachel can tell you how bad it looks, because when you go into those prisons, when you look at devastation in your wake, whether it's a relationship that you just jacked up,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
if it's something financially that you just were, you know, toe up, it could be you're not physically healthy. It could be you're mentally just all sorts of gobbled up. You're emotionally unregulated. You could be in relationships and in a professional space. You can't seem to hold it down. There's a lot. So there are two extremes to how it can look. And a lot of people may be in the middle, but what you want to do is figure out, are you in a space or moving towards space that's towards what it looks like in the good? And it may take you a couple years to get there. But if you're moving towards it because you have that intentionality that is aspiring for mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, financial, you know, relationships, career, that is in a positive and peaceful space, then that's the direction you move in. But I just wanted to kind of say that because there's a contrast in lifestyle, and you can see that when people show up. You can see it in their eyes. You can see it in the pain that they've endured, that they're unable to reconcile it and move past it. So there's a lot in that, how it looks question that we didn't get into. But man, that is a powerful question, because individually we've seen it, we're experiencing it in some sort
Yeah.
of form or fashion, and you know how it can be when it gets really bad.
Yes. And that is so, when you're bringing this up, right? Like, one, even if right now you're men, you all are not at this space, there's hope. You can get there. And when you do, there's such benefit. And so, Eddie, even for you as a man that is healthy, you have family, you have mentorship, you mentor people, even if they're older than you. But being able to be in this space, how has it helped you, like personally? Like, what has been some of the benefits to be in this kind of a space?
I think it's what I found is over the last probably 5 or 6 years, is to see stuff come back full circle. So all of
Mm,
us travel a path that sometimes, you know, it's rocky. Sometimes stuff has to be reconciled. Sometimes it's more smooth than it is bumpy. And so I've been in a position where I've been mentoring a lot of different people. We meet, and as you know, I'm one of those who give unsolicited advice. I was just talking to a young man. He's 28. And I'm like, man, I thought you're like in your mid 20s. But there's a group of kids that we led our children's church program back, 10, 15 years ago. They're grown up. And when they were transitional adults, what I call that age during college, I would send them weekly messages in scripture to prepare them for adulthood. I did it for a group of about maybe a dozen kids for maybe about 3 or 4 years. And so it's fascinating when you see them come back, when you see people who've been in the military that I've mentored and their kids are in college. And I just had lunch or dinner with a friend of mine, and they bring up information or insights or recommendations or considerations that I said, I ain't even remember, Rachel. I said, yeah, you said this, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it really set me and my family. I was like, wow, really? But you hear that. And so the legacy we talk about is not just the legacy of your family,
yeah.
but it's the legacy of those you're in relationship with, where they view you and you're able to pour into them. The one guy say, make your tragedy your testimony, because then when you share that, no matter how
Yep.
bad it is,
Yep.
you are actually empowering someone, kind of from Rachel's definition of empowerment. You're empowering someone to really take ownership of where they are so that they can be in a better place. And you don't always get that feedback. Some of the stuff, I've been doing stuff for 15, 20 years, and you don't hear it till 10 or 15 years later. So that's one of the benefits when you kind of put yourself in a position to pour into others. but you got to get yourself in a position to do that. And you got to be willing to be vulnerable. There are stories I tell people that ain't the pretty stories, right? It's the relationship issue I had with my brother. It's the challenge I had back in 2011, 2012 with my marriage. It's the personal reevaluations I had to make when I was 16. It may look okay and refined when I'm 53 like I am now, but most people say, you ain't seen me where I was, probably that quote you're trying to say.
Yeah.
You ain't seen me where I was, based on where I am.
Yes. Eddie, I'm going to ask you this, right? How does it feel to be in this space where you have grown, you've kind of been able to reevaluate, you've learned, you've challenged yourself to be disciplined, to do what's right, even when it doesn't feel good? How does it feel to have practiced that lifestyle and to now be where you are as a result of ongoing doing that consistent?
you know, the way it feels is peaceful. I talk about peace is accepting where you are, and joy is being excited for where you're going. And one complements the other. And when you've resolved and reconciled the errors and the flaws that you've had, the mistakes that you've made, no matter how big they are or
Mm-hmm.
they were, and you get to a point where you're where you are and you're at peace with where you are, that's when you can sit by yourself for 20, 30 minutes and just appreciate the wonder of God's nature. That's where you can go do a hobby and you can laugh and you can be with friends and you can smile and you can be engaged and you can celebrate what they're doing. I had a friend of mine retired. He's in a home care business by himself. He talked for 20, 30 minutes about everything he went through. And it was genuine that I was proud and happy of him. And then I gave him some advice on the backside, right? But it is a level of peace and joy that allows you to then offer willingly to those that can benefit from your journey. And I think that is another level of giving back. And I tell a lot of young people this. I told my friend, young man, Kiatre, he's 28. And I'll tell all these 20 somethings. I said, look, you're at a level of success where you need to document why you're successful. Because when people come into your space that are 18, 19, and they're asking for insights of how did they get to be where you are, or how did you
Yeah.
achieve success, you shouldn't give them this work hard and just show up. Give them something that they can apply. And part of that is reading where they are, because sometimes they may not ask you the question that you need to answer. And so you get to move to these different levels that if you don't travel the journey, you don't get to that level. But so you gotta accept it. Then you have to reconcile with it, and then you gotta project where you want to go, and then you're disciplined enough to go travel and take the steps to get there.
I love that. So, for those that are signing up for the wellness retreat for the men, this one is just for the men, ladies. And so, women, if your husband, your brother, your uncle needs some rest, they just need to pause because you see how hard they work. You see that they have a lot going on and they need a space just to decompress. Let them know about this, sign them up. Early bird is ending the end of this month. We have payment plans. It's only $500. That covers all your meals. It's a 4-day, 4-night relaxed on the beach, oceanfront beach house. Um, in addition to just being able to relax and decompress and take the mask off, you're going to also have the opportunity to meet one on one with me as a therapist, to help you kind of process some of what you might have going on in a safe, non judgmental way. And then, Eddie, talk a little bit about what the men are going to get when they sign up and attend the retreat.
Yeah, I'm just going to try to complement what Rachel's doing. There's a lot that we're trying to offer because I think the term, and it was a term that I talked about because it's a big term, intentional. Being intentional about living your life. We only get one life. That's all we have. And no matter how bad it was before, the fact that you get up another day means you have another day. And being intentional about how you are going about your business. How disciplined are you? What does that mean? Are you leading yourself? Do you know yourself to lead yourself? How are you enacting the aspiration you have for your life? How are you dealing with transitions from where you were to where you are? All those different things, and you integrate that in with what Rachel is going to offer. We believe that you're going to walk away not only refreshed, rejuvenated, but also equipped to take actions to further what you want to be realized in your life and what you want for those you care for.
That part, because man, you cannot show up the way you want to until you have poured back into yourself. And so we are definitely wanting to be able to offer that. The other thing, if you are a business owner, and the link for the retreat is in the comment. But if you're a business owner and you are looking to get your business name out there in front of these kings, we are looking for sponsors. And so if you'd like to, we have sponsorship packages and tiers. The link is also in the comment as well. Edwina said, "What? But can I draw on a little mustache and come too?" I love it. I love it. No, but you can sign up, Queens. We are going to be doing in January the Love Like You've Never Been Hurt Before. And so that is our coaching. And from there, we probably will do a retreat of our own. But I definitely got to get the men squared away first. But that is hilarious. And so sign your man up for those of y'all that are married or you got a boo jank and you want your husband or your soon to be husband to be able to show up. Ladies, because I know y'all are tired of saying, "I wish he'll step up." And he like, "I wish he'll step back so I can step up." And so, but that takes a level of confidence that Eddie was talking about. You as the man have to know who you are. And so it takes a level of confidence to be able to step up. Because sometimes y'all don't want to deal with the smoke. And Queens, we have got to stop giving all this smoke. Like, can we? So that the man can step up. And so we want to rejuvenate the men. We want to give y'all a safe space to rest, to relax, but also to leave with practical tools that you can start using to get where you want to go. We want to help you become more self-disciplined so that you can lead you first, and then the rest of the people that are going to come, especially those men, those of y'all who are looking to be husbands and fathers. You want to be as healed, healthy, and whole as you can. Edwina said, "Okay, fine then. I'll be there. I'm going to ask him, but we will see." Well, I want to say thank y'all for joining for another Tough Talk Tuesday. And again, I do apologize. The devil was trying to be busy today. StreamYard was having some challenges coming on to Facebook. So you should be able to, if you missed any parts of it, you should be able to go back and catch all of it. I'm hopeful. If not, I will try to post the whole segment up there. I'll post that download up there. But thank y'all again for joining next Wednesday. So all of the Wednesdays in September, Wellness Wednesdays, we are going to be talking to pastors. So if your pastor needs to hear, let them know. We're going to be talking to pastors because guess what? Pastors are people. And because they are people, and just like Rosalind said, they have humanity and they have spaces where they are hurt. And it is important for us to support them because they lead and a lot of times they're leading from bruised places because they don't have safe spaces to be able to talk about it. And so we have our Shepherds Retreat that is going to be in November the 13th through the, no, what is it? 11th through
11,
the 13th in Texas. So we are looking to support our shepherds, the pastors, because they deserve it. They need it. And excellent. Thank y'all for joining. Share this. And the link for the Shepherd's Retreat is also going to be in the comments. So y'all will be able to see that and get that information. Any last words before we end for tonight?
I think the last thing I would say is for anybody listening, whether you're a man or a woman, um, discipline is something we all, I think, need to be cognizant of. We all need to self check, right? What are you doing to create the positive habits to enable you to achieve what you want, whether it's personally, professionally, in relationships, financially, whatever it is. So I think this is a great topic, Rachel. Me, I tell people I can talk leadership. It's like the size of the room, right? You give me a little closet, I can talk leadership. You give me an auditorium, I'll talk leadership. Leadership is just something I love to talk about. So I really enjoyed tonight's session. Thank you for having me on, and looking forward to next month.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. And thank you all again for your patience with the technical difficulties. You all be blessed. I'm going to close this out in prayer. Eddie, can you close us out in prayer?
Yeah, I can. I can. Let's go to the Lord. Father God, thank you for this day. Thank you for waking us up, Lord, and bringing us into this space that we could share thoughts, ideas, that we could fellowship, even though virtually, and that we could laugh and we can learn, Lord. We thank you for the lives that you've given us, Lord. Every day that we wake up is another day we have to serve you, to fulfill the purpose that you've charged us. And that way we may enrich and enlarge your kingdom, Lord, that we may show you glory, that we may show you honor, for you've given us grace and mercy and love. I ask you to watch over every person who's on this call, every person who listens to it and recording. I ask you to continue to bless Rachel and all the work that she is doing. And may the retreats that happen in October and November serve those who come. May they glorify your kingdom, and may every person who comes leave being better spiritually and mentally, emotionally, for their time that they spent there. We ask this in your son's precious and holy name. Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank y'all for joining. I am going to go live on TikTok for just a few minutes so I can practice for next month. So y'all feel free to join me there. What's my thing? Is at Desiree Hunter. Um, so I'm gonna go live there just for a few, just so I can practice, y'all. But y'all be blessed. Y'all take care. And I'll see y'all next Wednesday, 7 p.m.